Good morning, everybody. Today I am talking about my personal struggles with rehabilitating slap tears. I've been asked this question on YouTube and it is a hot topic. A lot of people have slap tears. A lot of people are interested in what my personal experience is because there's a lot of experts out there talking about it who haven't actually dealt with it themselves. And having dealt with not one but two, one in both shoulders, I guess I'm a bit of an expert on it because I've come out of them without having to have surgery and I'm back to full capacity and even beyond. I'm stronger now and more flexible with my shoulders than I was before the slap tears. So if you're interested in that, if you want to know the struggles, the ups and downs that I went through, what I did, how I got out of it, the whole process, if you've got any questions, then this is for you. Tune in. And before we get started, I am going to take a moment to thank our sponsors. For today's show and for everything that we do, Yanni and I are supported by a company in Australia called VPA Australia. These guys provide the best quality supplements. We've been taking VPA supplements for about a decade now, and we reached out to them a little while ago and asked if they wanted to sponsor us, and they were kind enough to do so. So these are the guys that are fueling our bodies, our transformations, and protein, green supplements, things like that. These are all really, really important. They're a huge part of what we do. I never was able to really grow muscle until I started taking protein and creatine monohydrate, and I now take several other supplements that they offer, and it is definitely the icing on the cake and it's been a part of my rehab as well. A big part of slap tear rehab is to get as strong as possible and build as much muscle in your shoulders as you can. So if you are interested in the supplements that we take, head on over to VPA or vpa.com.au and you can use code RAD10, RAD10 at checkout to get a 10% discount. So here we go, team. I've been asked this question and I'll bring the question up so that you guys can see it because I posted last week saying, what topics do you guys want me to cover next week in my live streams? And I got asked this question here. How long your first and slap tear took for you to personally rehabilitate and the mental battles you experienced through along with other injuries. Lots of videos out there make it seem like people can recover in 3 to 6 weeks, which isn't the case, and every case is different. How strong were you going in, etc. Yeah, really, there's videos out there claiming that you can recover in 3 to 6 weeks. That is a bold claim because that is certainly not what I experienced at all. So I'm going to answer this question and I'm going to go really deep into it. So my journey, I guess I have to start by, sorry, give me one sec. You guys have to excuse me. Whenever I do these live streams, it's 5:30 a.m. over here. I've literally just woken up and these are the first words I've spoke. So I haven't cleared my throat or anything yet. Whenever I get on the live stream and start talking, I've always got to clear my throat. So I'm 46 now. It's 2024. I think my first slap tear was in 2019 because I remember in 2020 in COVID we were doing these live stream workouts and I was doing them and I remember I was really sketchy on doing them because I was about 8 months into my slap tear rehab, so I was 8 months post slap tear, and you can see all those videos. If you go back to 2020 you can see those live streams of me doing these workouts, and so it was 5 years ago now. And, excuse me. And what happened, I was pushing myself with calisthenics. I started calisthenics when I was about 36, and I was really trying to, force progression with the planche. I really didn't understand calisthenics progressive overload the way that I do now, and I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the raw strength for doing the planche. And, that position, your arm is back here a little bit and there is a lot of pressure on the long head of the bicep because the long head of the bicep assists in shoulder flexion. And there was too much pressure on the day that I was trying to force progress and trying to get an extra second or two in my hold times. And I did a slap tear. So I was doing the workout and I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder. But funnily enough, when it happened, it wasn't even enough to stop me from finishing my workout. I was like, I had a very different mentality back then. I had a bit of an all or nothing mentality, and I was like, no, stuff this. I'm finishing my workout. I'm going to get through it. And so I finished my workout, and I was really thinking to myself, whatever. I've just done a little micro tear. I'll have to, ice it and rest it for a couple of days, and then I'll be all right. And later that day, when the adrenaline wore off from the workout, and when my body cooled down, I couldn't lift my arm past here. It was agony to lift my arm past here, and I was in denial. I was just telling myself, it'll be all right in a couple of days or in a week, and a week turned into 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turned into a month, and I still couldn't move my shoulder well at all. I basically hadn't done any training for that time, and so I actually did things the way that I wouldn't recommend doing it. I went straight to get an MRI, but I went straight to get an MRI because I would recommend anybody would go to a physiotherapist or a physical therapist, you call them in America, to help with the diagnosis, and a good sports physical therapist you don't want to just go to Joe Bloggs down the road. But fortunately for me, I had a couple of exceptional sports physical therapists working out of Unity Gym, and so I was able to just get a referral for my MRI and talk to them. So I was basically getting what you would get from a physical therapist treatment, just consultation, just by going into work. So my friends would, they could assess me on the spot, and they said, yeah, go and get an MRI. So I got the MRI, and the MRI said slap tear type 2. And fluid in the bursa, torn supraspinatus, and what else was there? Early onset of degenerative joint disease, which is basically arthritis. And that's pretty normal. Anybody my age that has been as active as I have, if you went and got an MRI, you'd probably have the early onset of arthritis. So that was crippling for me. The mental battle that I went through when I got that news was, it was profound. I don't really know how to describe how hard that was for me, because I had some pretty bad injuries that I'd already recovered from. I'd fractured my spine when I was in the army, and I have spondylolisthesis and spondylosis in L4 and L5 as a result. And that was hard enough for me to get over. Like, I had to learn a lot about dealing with lower back pain and how to manage it to get to a point where I was now pain-free, and I was able to train despite having bilateral pars fracture and spondylolisthesis and spondylosis. I'd also recently recovered from a torn meniscus, which was, there was like 6 months where I couldn't do a lot of leg exercises properly. I'd recovered from golfer's elbow that got so bad that I couldn't do any hanging or pulling exercises for 9 months. And a decade and a half before that, I'd had surgery on my right foot for a torn Lisfranc ligament. And so, I had my battle scars. I had my, I'd earned my stripes when it comes to injuries. And I really thought that stuff was behind me. And it was a really, really hard moment for me. Because it's just this recognition that all of your goals and everything that you're working on just have to be shelved and put to the side. I had to stop doing all my handstand work and all the calisthenics work that I wanted to do, and I had to just focus on rehab. But fortunately for me, because I had gone through several injuries before, I had a better mentality around injury rehabilitation. I understood, in the very least, that that when you have an injury, the number one goal is to fix that injury. And despite what your other goals are, what the big goals are, you have to fix that injury before you can focus on those goals. So I understood that. So I was able to just sort of accept it and get on with the work. And if you guys haven't got this, if you want the strategy of what I did, the rehab strategy, go and get the slap tear rehab blueprint. If you go to unitygym.com/slap tear blueprint, and there's a link in the description of this video. And I forgot to say as well, for those of you that are regular watchers, what do you think of my haircut? I had my first haircut in a year. I don't have the big mop long hair anymore. I got tired of it. So I went and got a haircut on the weekend. So give me a subscribe if you like my new haircut. And if you don't, then unsubscribe. So I went through this mental battle, but what I did, I'd in the very least, throughout my life, I've practiced kung fu a lot. I've learned a lot of discipline from martial arts. I've practiced stoicism, and if you don't know what stoicism is, it's all about putting a lot of energy into what you can control and putting very little energy into what you can't control. And this is probably the first tip that I would have for anybody, that when you have a bad injury, if you have a slap tear, I think the first step is really important, is to just embrace where you're at and just accept it. Because I see a lot of people that don't do this. A lot of people really spiral when they get injured. Like when they realize that they can't do the things that they want to do anymore and they have to focus on injury rehabilitation. It gets them to this really weird mental state where they start becoming self-destructive and they stop training altogether. Like people seem to think that when you've got an injury like a slap tear, that means that you stop training and you wait until the injury gets better. And that is the worst thing that you can do. And I'm going to talk you through that as well. Because when you stop working out, the only thing that really changes is that the inflammation goes down. But the tears and the everything that's like the damage within the joint, you need strength training to repair those tears. And you can't repair a slap tear. I'll talk more about that. But the torn supraspinatus and the weak muscles that created the environment for the slap tear, you have to strengthen yourself to get out of that. And if you don't do that, if you don't exercise and do strength work and rehabilitation, you're getting weaker and you're losing muscle mass. Your muscles are atrophying. And so what might happen is you might experience that the pain that you feel when you're just doing whatever subsides, and then you decide a month later, I'm going to go back to working out. But the conditions of the injury are still there. Only the inflammation's gone down, and you're now weaker than you were before, and you won't be able to do even close to what you were able to do before. And people get in this vicious cycle where they don't understand how to get from there to where they want to be, and they just keep going through this. Every time I go back to exercise, it hurts, so then I rest again, and then it doesn't hurt, and then I go back, and you just go through this terrible cycle, and it really gets you nowhere. Viper Gas is saying, are there any injuries you didn't get? You have to say, it's awesome that you moved past these obstacles. I appreciate that, man. And it's funny that you say that. Are there any injuries that I didn't get? There's not really. There's heaps of injuries that I didn't get, but all the major joints in the body, all the major parts of the body, I've had some pretty bad injuries. I didn't mention I've had a pretty nasty little sprain and inflammation in the I can never remember the name of these, the carpals, I think they're called. I think in the feet they're called tarsals, and in the hand they're called carpals, I think. They're tiny little bones in your hand there, and that caused me to not be able to put any pressure on my hands like that when I was doing handstands. So I had to stop doing anything where I was putting hands on the ground. I had to use parallettes like that for ages. Then I got golfer's elbow, couldn't do any pulling. Then I got tennis elbow, so that created other problems. And then slap tears plus my fractured spine, knee meniscus, and an injury to my foot. So I've had all the joints. I've done all of the major joints, and I've overcome them. And it's because of the every joint and every injury has its own specific rehabilitation that you have to do. But I've definitely developed a very strong understanding of the idea that you must exercise to overcome sports injuries. And I'm also living proof that you can overcome sports injuries without getting surgery. The only surgery that I did have was for the torn Lisfranc ligament, and that's because like my big toe, where it's meant to be held together to the rest of your foot like this, my big toe was like flapping around, and you really have to get a screw put in there to hold it together so that the ligament can reform. So I did get surgery for that one. So I went through this process of depression that lasted, I don't know, maybe a week or so. I let it, it really hit me. And, everybody that I spoke to when they were telling me, you've got a slap tear, and I spoke to physical therapists, physios in Australia. I spoke to surgeons, I spoke to doctors, and the surgeons were terrible, man. They were so just cut and paste responses. They were like just telling me the statistics of what my chances were for recovery, and it was so low. They were saying, yeah, look, you're pretty much never going to be able to do, because I told them what I was doing, and I was doing calisthenics and everything, and they said, yeah, you'll never be able to do that again, and you're going to have to get surgery if you want to be pain free, and blah 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 blah, and this and that. And so it was pretty hard listening to that. But fortunately for me, my sports physical therapist friends, the one that I was seeing, because I've got 3 friends that are good friends that are physical therapists, and 2 of them are physical therapists for elite football clubs in Australia, like the best of the best football code in Australia. So they're working on the best athletes in the world, and to get a job like that, those guys are like in a league of their own when it comes to physical therapists. Like their approach to the way that they treat you is on another level compared to the physical therapist that you would see when you go down the road. And they don't even see general population. I was very fortunate that they're friends of mine, and we've known each other in the industry for 15 years or so. So we've been friends, as we've both progressed through our careers. So I was able to reach out to Leroy, tell him that I had a slap tear, and he made an exception to see me. And his approach to it, he like when everybody else was giving me the, yeah, look, you're not going to be able to do that again, and maybe if we do this, maybe that will happen. His approach was just like, yeah, we're just going to strengthen these, and then we're just going to strengthen these, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to follow this, and then after a couple of weeks we'll check in, and then we'll do that. He wasn't even talking to me like I wasn't going to recover. He was just telling me very matter of fact of what I had to do, and he was just talking to me like it was another day at work for him, And so I started doing the rehab that he taught me how to do, and the results that I experienced were almost instantaneous. Like after the first session, my shoulder immediately felt better, and I immediately felt like I had more range of motion and less pain. And pretty much every week that range of motion increased and the pain decreased. And 4 weeks after the slap tear, I still couldn't move my arm past here. I honestly couldn't lift my shoulder past about that high. And to try and abduct, which is where you pull your arm out that way, I couldn't even go to here. And to try any combination, like I'd go to here and then the pain would kick in. And if I tried to go there, I just couldn't do it. Like I couldn't do anything. So I was thinking to myself, like, what can I even do? But the exercises that he showed me, which, it's all in the 20-minute slap tear rehab routine, which you can learn about if you get that slap tear rehab blueprint. The exercises that he gave me to do were all within, training within that pain-free range. And then the idea is that you increase that pain-free range, as quickly as you can, with different exercises, and, constantly checking in with where you're at. And there's this basic process where, you can always exercise in the presence of injury. The idea that you can't exercise when you're injured is completely flawed. It's just that you have to change a whole bunch of variables. So you can change the range of motion, you can change the intensity, which is how much weight you're lifting, you can change the volume, which is how many reps you do per set, or how many sets you do in a workout, or how many workouts you do in a week. You can change the tempo, so how quickly the concentric and the eccentric phase is, and pauses, things like that. And I'll tell you just quickly on temp. Actually, I'll tell you the last one. And the last one is that you can change the exercise complexity. So you can go to a more complex or a less complex exercise. And by manipulating any or all of those variables, you can always exercise and work out in the presence of injury. And I'll just give you a hot tip. When it comes to slap tear rehab, the tempo should always be slow and controlled. You never, ever, ever do a sharp movement when you're doing slap tear rehab, because there will be points in an exercise where you'll feel like it's okay to push here, but this one part really hurts, and then it's okay to push there. You should never skip past that part that hurts. You should work through it. So you'll feel it and you'll go, oh, that hurts. And then you might need to reduce the range, the intensity by lowering the weight, so that you can work through that point that hurts, but without rushing it, because you have to learn to own that full range of motion. So don't ever skip past or go fast past a point that hurts. You've always got to work through that. So yeah, Leroy gave me I was working pretty closely with him. I was seeing him probably once a week. I think I saw him a couple of times in the first week, and then after that, I was just going in every week to check up on it. And the progress happened fast. Like, I went from that range of motion that I had to being able to do shoulder pressing within about 8 to 12 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but I was doing shoulder pressing within about 8 to 12 weeks. And at about week 16, I think, like at the end of the fourth or fifth month, I was doing behind the head shoulder pressing. And the first couple of times I did behind the head shoulder pressing, it was brutal. It was like, like coming down here, like I could barely get the weight down to the middle of my neck. But the whole idea is that you're constantly meant to challenge yourself within a safe range of motion. And the general rule of thumb is that if you experience a little bit of pain, and everybody's level of pain, everybody's experience with pain is different. So for some people, what they say is a 2 out of 10 pain, it's somebody else's 6 out of 10. So the general rule of thumb is like you don't go beyond a 2 to 4 out of 10 pain, but that could be different depending on your pain experience. But so a little bit of pain during a set is acceptable as long as it doesn't continue after the set. And even if the pain continues through the workout, it's not ideal, but it's not catastrophic. What you absolutely don't want, and what you need to be very aware of, is that your baseline level of pain doesn't increase. So my baseline level of pain, not being able to lift my arm past here and not being able to go past there. If I finished my workout and now all of a sudden I couldn't lift my arm past here, like I'd decreased my range of motion and my shoulder was hurting more the next day, then that's bad. And that means that I need to adjust my workout via any of those 5 variables. And I've actually got a video series where I explain those 5 variables really well. So I'll put a link in the description of this video afterwards so that you can see that playlist if you're interested in that. And so what would happen is that even if you do experience that little bit of pain during the workout, then the next day, if the baseline level of pain hasn't increased, that's okay. Game on. Keep going at it. And so, I went through, because the progress happened, nice and in a linear fashion, like I was consistently getting better. And sometimes you have, like, from week to week, sometimes you'll get a little bit of pain. And there was so many like weird clicking and popping sounds and stuff through this process. Like as I'd go through, when I started doing, like, you start doing external rotations down here, and as I started doing external rotations at a higher point, I remember there was this like weird clicking and popping sound. Like my shoulder would go like, and you'd hear it. You could hear this, and you could put your hand on it and feel like this, like jolting around. And when I asked my physical therapist friends, they always would say to me, is it painful? Does it hurt when that happens? And my answer was no, I can just hear it. And they said, well, don't worry about it. And I asked them if they could tell me what it was. And this is coming from some of the best physical therapists in the world. And they just said, man, there is so much going on in your shoulder. There are so many structures in there. There's so many muscles and tendons and connective tissue and all these things, that it could be one of many things. But if it's not associated with pain, and if we can see that the functionality of your shoulder is improving, so what happens in the earlier stages of slap tear rehab is that your scapular stabilizers and your rotator cuff basically stop doing their job properly, and you start getting dysfunctional shoulder movement. So if you like raise your arms up like this, the injured side will be up like this, like you'll get this really dysfunctional movement in the shoulder. And what we want to look for is that over time that function is returning. And so you're getting, when you do these movements like in week 1 versus week 4 or week 8 or whatever, that we're seeing, better function within the shoulder, that the shoulder's progressing the way that we want to. And so all these little sounds and all these pops and all these things, I was fortunate enough that I had people right there that I could ask every day. Like I was doing my workouts and Phil, a physical therapist, was there. And when I did my second slap tear, which I'll get to, one of my other friends, Nilesh, who's again a sports physical therapist for an elite football team in Australia, he was working in Unity Gym. And so he was there with me when I was working out. So as I'm working out, I'm able to just talk to these exceptional physical therapists, which I wonder how many people in the world have ever had that experience. Like how many people beyond a professional athlete have had a slap tear, and in every single workout that they've been doing, they've had a physical therapist there with them. Every single workout, not once a week check-ins, because that's what I had, and that's how I got the level of understanding that I have around slap tears and around all the injuries that I've had. So I kept progressing, and I'm trying to think, because a part of this question was, how long did it take you to personally rehabilitate? And that's an interesting question, because what I remember that I don't remember exactly when it was. I don't know if it was like month 10 or month 12, but I remember it around that 1 year mark, kind of having this moment where I thought, wow, my shoulders, like it's not problematic anymore. I mean, even thanks Nathaniel for the comment on my haircut. I appreciate it. Even Leroy, this exceptional sports physical therapist, when I was talking in the later phases of my recovery, and I was saying it still really hurts to go in loaded shoulder extension. So on a deep chest press, if you're doing a semi-supinated grip, your shoulder, your humerus goes through shoulder extension, that's called. And I was saying that's still quite painful for me. And he was explaining to me why that happens. And that's because the long head of the bicep, which connects to the top of the labrum, which is right where a slap tear occurs. So when you look at the long head of the bicep, it comes up the humerus and then it hooks over and it connects onto the top of the labrum. And so when you go to a shoulder extension and that long head of the bicep is being stretched to its full range of motion, it's pulling on the slap tear. And he said, you might not ever be able to do dips again. And that was one of the only things that he ever said to me, which was in the realm of, you might have to accept this. And I still, in my mind, and I'll get to this in a minute. I'll get to mindset. I was like, no way, I'm not going for that. But he didn't say it to me like it was a serious thing. He just says it like a throwaway comment. He's like, oh, you might never be able to do dips again. A lot of people that have slap tears, they can't do dips ever again. It's just the way it is. And at that stage, I was starting to play around with dips again. So I was just teasing it. And what I mean by that is, I was using a reduced range of motion. So I was using dips, but I wasn't going deep at all. And if you look at any of my videos of me doing dips, and I'll bring one up. I can go so deep in dips, and I'll talk you through this, that I get trolls on YouTube saying you should never go that deep in a dip and that's dangerous and blah, 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 blah. And this is all post slap tear. So I'm going to pull this up because I want to give you guys some context as to how far I've come with my recovery, because being told by an elite sports physical therapist that you might never do dips again, and this is me. I don't know. This is about 4 weeks ago. Actually, no, it's about 6 weeks ago, because I was doing 1 1/4 dips in this workout here, and you can see I'm almost going full range of motion, and I can actually get my shoulders to touch the parallettes. But what I've been experiencing is that when I go deeper than that, I do still get a little bit of pain in my shoulder, and it's just not worth it. I don't need to go deeper than that. But you might be thinking, why would I go that deep? And that's a good question. And the reason why I do go that deep is because it is use it or lose it. You're either using your range of motion, you're using what you have available to you, or you're losing it. And that's a key part of flexibility development. So something that I talk about in the flexibility blueprint. If you haven't got that, go to unitygym.com/flexibility, and you can learn all about that. But one of the key factors to building and maintaining flexibility is full range strength training. So if you train a reduced range of motion, then you'll lose your range of motion. Your range of motion will adapt to accommodate what the range that you're training is. So the nervous system just adapts to it. So I didn't want that. I wanted to regain full range of motion in my shoulders. And so I really wanted to explore dips. And so I do dips all the time now, because I've got I train at home here, so I don't have a bench with a barbell. I've got a bench, but with dumbbells. And so I always use dips in my upper body workouts. They're like my go-to push movement for the primary component of my workout. And so, to be able to get to that stage post slap tear is a really big deal, I'm told, by a really good sports physical therapist. So, Justin Howard is saying, very true. Even in yoga, if I stop for a bit due to schedule, I have to go back to the basics. Yeah, it's true, Justin. So, I got to that point, to about the 12-month point, and I was really happy. We had finished 3 months of doing, 12 weeks of doing lockdown workouts. So I'm getting the timeline back now, because the world knows when we all went into lockdown. In Australia, we went into lockdown in March 2020, and that's when I started doing these live streamed home workouts. And that was a real test for me of what my what my shoulder could handle, because I was doing pike push-ups and a lot of upper body work using calisthenics, because we were doing them for people that were at home that didn't have gym equipment. And I got through that. I got through those 12 weeks of doing that, and I was feeling pretty good. And 14 months after my first slap tear happened, I did a slap tear on this shoulder. And that one, I actually did doing a handstand. And I did it after doing a personal record on bench press. So, because I'd never really done hypertrophy training before. I should say I'd never done hypertrophy training before my slap tears. I had done like a month of hypertrophy training or whatever, but I'd never done a consistent amount of time enough to build any real muscle. And I learned through my slap tear rehab that building muscle and getting that shoulder as strong as possible is a really, really important part of it. So I was working on building muscle for the first time in my life, and working on getting as strong as I could. And I did a personal best on bench press. So I was 14 months after my slap tear, and I was starting to do some real strength training, and I was doing wave loading. And so wave loading is where you do there's different ways that you can do wave loading, but what we use in the UMS is where you do 6 sets, and you do 5 reps, increase the weight, 3 reps, increase the weight, 2 reps, drop the weight back, and then repeat 5-3-2, but the second wave is a little bit heavier than the first wave. And on my final set, I did 110 kilogram bench press, which is 220 pounds. That was a personal record for me, and not a powerlifting bench press either. So that's like a closer grip, touching the bar to your chest and pushing all the way up. So it's a much deeper range of motion. And I did it. Finished the workout. My shoulders were just cooked. Like I just felt really fried, and there was a little bit of a dull ache in my shoulders. But I was okay. And the next morning I went into the gym to do my handstand workout like I always do. And I warmed up and I jumped up on the wall to do my handstand. And as I was on the wall, I felt this in my other shoulder. So in my good shoulder, I felt this pain like creep in. Like this shoulder, it was like this sharp pain. It just went bang. On this one, it crept in, and I felt it coming on, and I was like, man, if I knew what I know now and what I'm about to tell you, I should have stopped straight away. And I reckon I probably could have avoided the slap tear, because I felt this pain slowly coming on. I just thought, no, I'm going to hold my set. It's the first set of my workout. And this is what I mean about how different my mentality is. I still, at this point, had the all or nothing mentality. I still was thinking to myself, it's like I'm either doing it and I'm doing it to the best level that I can, or I'm not doing anything at all. And I don't have that mentality at all now. I have what we call at Unity Gym, a some is better than none mentality. And I'll talk you through the difference of that in a minute, because it was this moment that really changed my life for the second time, because I pushed through it and I held the handstand, and the pain came on, and then it got to a point where it was agony and I had to drop down, and fuck, what was that? And I was smart enough to not continue that workout. And in the back of my mind, I was like, fuck, what have I done to this shoulder? And I didn't wait a month this time. I pretty much just went straight away, like within a day or two, and I went and got an MRI. And lo and behold, I had another slap tear, a slap tear in this shoulder. And I couldn't fucking believe it. I was just like, I cannot believe this, but my mentality was different because I knew exactly what to do this time. This time, I was fortunate enough to still have, again, an exceptional sports physical therapist, and this one came with some different things, because on the right side it was a slap tear with a torn supraspinatus fluid in the bursa and degenerative joint disorder or early onset of arthritis. On the left side it was a slap tear. There was some damage to the bicep. I can't remember what it was because it wasn't nearly as bad as the slap tear. And there was another part of my rotator cuff that was torn. I think it was the teres minor or the infraspinatus. I can't remember which one. It was a torn infraspinatus or a torn teres minor. And whenever I had these rotator cuff tears, none of them were a full tear, which means that the tendon was still attached. And rehabilitation for a rotator cuff tear where the tendon is still attached is really not that big a deal, honestly. Everybody thinks it's horrible, and it is. It's a horrible thing to deal with, but it's only about probably 3 to 6 weeks of rehab to actually repair the muscle. And then after that, you just have to deal with the dysfunction of the joint, which is that, again, the scapular stabilizers and the rotator cuff aren't doing their job properly. You're getting dysfunctional shoulder movement, which means you start getting joint glide. So the humerus that sits in the glenohumeral joint that's meant to move like that, like a ball and socket, it's now moving like that, and that causes agonizing pain. So 6 or 8 weeks after your rotator cuff tear, when you still lift your arm and you're experiencing pain, it is most certainly not because the rotator cuff is still torn. If you've done the right rehab, it is now that you have a dysfunctional shoulder, and the process for rehabilitating that is different, or the process for coming out of that is different than it is for rehabbing the actual torn rotator cuff. So anyway, so I had I'll get back on my train of thought in a sec here, but Alan Davidson has said, "Hi Rad, on another rehab versus op track, do you have any wisdom to impart on inguinal hernias? Could it be worth a future live chat?" I'll talk about that a bit later, Alan. And hi, Marin. Good morning. Welcome to the show. So, yeah, this was a crushing moment for me to get that second slap tear. That was a really, really big deal. But I got over it and got on with it way quicker than I did with the first one, because I was confident, because of what I dealt with my first slap tear and how much stronger that shoulder was. I knew that I could do it with this one. So I didn't have that fear or doubt that I had with the first one. The first one I went through some horrible fear. I processed a lot of fear, had a lot of doubt. Even, for months during the process, I had this real doubt in the back of my mind of, was I ever going to get back to doing the things that I love doing? And so, I really knew what I needed to do. I worked with, at that time, so that was during, I think that was during the second, or it was just before the second lockdowns in Australia, I think. Because Nilesh, who was at the time, he was a sports physical therapist for the GWS Giants, which is an AFL team, or Australian Football League, so the highest code of football in Australia, the highest paid athletes. But because they were, whatever was going on for them, they were on reduced staff or whatever it was, and so he was on almost work from home hours for a full-time physical therapist. And so he came into Unity Gym, and we had a clinic there. We'd made a clinic for a physical therapist, and he was treating general population for the first time in a decade or something. And so I was fortunate enough to have him there, treating me and working with me and helping me through it. And, it was this same process that I went through, but I knew what I was dealing with, and it was so much quicker for me the second time. It took me maybe, 10 or 12 months to get back to, let's say 90% full capacity, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Whereas the second slap tear, it took me, I remember it was 6 months, and I was almost back to where I was before. And that second one has had a better recovery than the first one. It just happened so much quicker. And so then, onwards and upwards. And what happens is with, the more I do these live streams and the more I put these videos out and I see the questions, I almost put, for you guys that are watching these videos, I put everybody in sort of two categories. There's the category of those of you who are not as passionate as the rest of us about getting back to full functionality. And those people, like, they're not passionate about sports, and they often knock me for saying things like, don't get surgery. Surgery is a last resort. Like, I had this guy recently comment on a video, making fun of my videos, saying, what are you doing? Go and get surgery. Like, this is so stupid. And yeah, there's people out there that are like that. And if you don't care about, getting back to doing what you love doing, the sporting and activities and things like that, then yeah, maybe surgery is a good option for you, because you don't have to do anything. You just go and lay down and they put you to sleep and you wake up and it's all done. So it's very little effort from you. But it is not guaranteed that it's going to make your injury better. In fact, far worse than that. Nilesh told me that in slap tear rehab surgery, that in 60% of cases, the symptoms don't improve. So wrap your head around that. And there's a lot of people that get surgery the second time because the first slap tear surgery wasn't successful. And so for me, like, surgery just wasn't an option. Surgery was a last resort. And I talked through surgery with Nilesh at length. I talked to him about it. And I talked to him about it from the perspective of, what do AFL players do? What do professional players do? And he said, well, if they can do, he said this answer like it just rolled off his tongue. He didn't have to think about it. He said, if they can do the rehab, then they don't get surgery. If they can't do the rehab, then they get surgery. So meaning, if the symptoms are so bad that I give them rehab and they can't do it because it's so painful that they can't do the rehab exercises, then they go and get the surgery. And then they do the rehab again anyway, because you still have to do rehab after the surgery. But if you can do the exercises, you can get through it, then you don't get the surgery. And then it just rolled off his tongue. He said they can always go and get surgery when the season's over. So if they're in the middle of the season, we rehabilitate them as quick as we can, because if they get surgery, they're out for that season. That's the end of the season for them. And so we try and get them back on the field as quick as we can. And then at the end of the season, if the shoulder's still hurting them, if it's still causing them problems, then we consider surgery. It's not that they just go and get it. We consider it. And there's so many reasons why a professional athlete of the absolute highest level that you can reach in Australian football, there's a very good reason why they do that. Professional athletes, in the grand scheme of things, they don't have that many seasons to enjoy what they do. If a professional athlete got 10 seasons out of their career, that would be considered a very, very good career. Some get less and some get more. So when you think about that, they really want to make sure that they can get through every season that they can. And when I was talking to Nilesh about all this, and we went through this a lot, there's a lot of podcasts that you can see, because we were going live back then daily. And so there's a lot of podcasts that you can see, I think in 2020 or 2021, when Nilesh is on the show with us. And, we were talking about this at length, this idea of, if you're, who do you want to be? Do you want to be somebody who is treated like a general population, like everybody else? Or do you want to be somebody that's treated like an athlete, and that approaches your body like an athlete? And for me, that answer is very obvious. I want to be treated like an athlete. I want to be somebody that definitely doesn't see any injury that I have as being the thing that stopped me from being able to do everything that I love. But that said, I am going to give that a little bit of a caveat, because at the same time, I have had injuries come up that have stopped me doing certain things that I love. The big one for me actually was the torn meniscus, because the torn meniscus, when I did that, any impact after that for the next 6 to 12 months, I can't exactly remember how long it was, because it was about 8 years ago now, it caused me a lot of pain. And again, I was talked through by the same physical therapist. I was talked through by Leroy at the time, what I have to do to rehabilitate the torn meniscus and what I need to avoid. And you really need to avoid impact and anything that causes it pain. And back then, I was still doing acrobatics. I did Kung Fu right through my 20s. And I used to do a lot of jump kicks and a lot of flips and things like that. And I was getting back into that. And I really enjoy that stuff. And that was actually the first moment where, in my adult life, where I had a very real conversation with myself. And I thought, what are the pros and cons of me continuing to do acrobatics like this now that I've got this injury? And because I know a lot of people that when they got injured, they didn't stop or they didn't back off on doing the thing that causes them the injury. And man, they basically get to a point where they don't have a choice. They just cannot do the thing that they love anymore. But now they can't even do other things because their body's in such a bad state. And I know a lot of people like that. And I didn't want to be that kind of a person. And so I weighed up, I thought to myself, how important is this to me? Are there other things that I can do in my life that are going to still give me that same sense of satisfaction, but that aren't going to, have this same increased risk of injury, and that aren't going to have a risk of making, this meniscus tear and this torn Lisfranc ligament in my foot way worse. And that's when I started to really decide that I was going to shift my focus into calisthenics. And I stopped practicing Kung Fu, and I stopped doing all of the acrobatics and everything that I was doing, completely stopped it, and focused on calisthenics, on learning something that I'd never done before, because I could see that it was something that I could still pursue, the pursuit of mastery, which is really important for me. I get very motivated by the pursuit of mastery. And it's something that I could see could be quite fulfilling for me. And the reason I'm saying this, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but if you've got a sports injury, or if you've got a slap tear that however you did it is a high risk for it injuring again, I know how much, I promise you, I know how much our identities are shaped, for those of us that are serious about our sports and our activities that we do. I know how much our identities are shaped by those activities. There's those of you out there that are like, your rock climbers, or your soccer players, or your tennis players, or your martial artists, or your gymnasts, or whatever it is that you love to do. And that really shapes your identity, and it becomes who you are. And the idea of losing that identity is very, very hard. And this is a much deeper and a much bigger conversation, because it's all the ego. The ego is what holds onto that identity, and the ego is what feels threatened when you talk about taking that identity away. And there's plenty of great books that are written by much wiser people than me on how you can overcome the ego and how you can learn to master it, I guess. And for me, I did that. I was able to let go of that part of myself and move into other areas that weren't going to make those injuries worse. And so I've had this meniscus tear that was 8 years ago now, and it doesn't cause me any problems at all, because I identified the certain things that I shouldn't do that will definitely make it worse, and I just stopped doing them. And in the earlier stages of doing that was really hard, because you're looking at all the things that you're missing out on. But I don't even think about it now, because my focus has shifted so sharply towards doing other things that I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. And I'm, and the thing with, what I love about calisthenics is there's a lot of skills, there's a lot of things that you can always be working towards, but it's always about getting stronger and more flexible. And so if you can focus on that process of just increasing strength, increasing flexibility, but you're always working towards these movement goals, and being process focused I think is really important. I think if you're goal focused, then that's probably one of the first things that I would recommend shifting, because there's a major problem with goals, and that is that you either achieve your goals or you don't achieve them, and both of them are just as destructive in different ways, because we see people achieving their goals all the time and then stopping training. And one of the best examples that I can think of is people that run marathons, people that don't run really at all, and they decide they want to run a half marathon, or they want to run a marathon in 6 months. And so they start training for the marathon. And I've seen it so many times, where they're coming into the gym and they're so consistent, and their health they get in such great shape, and they're coming into the gym to do resistance training because they want to make sure their muscles are strong enough for the marathon, and they're in this great mental space. And then all of a sudden I don't see them. I don't see them for a month, and I run into them on the street and I say, how come you're not coming into the gym anymore? And they, I ran the marathon, the marathon's over. And so they achieve their goal, and now their motivation to train is gone, and they just stop training. And so instead of having a goal of wanting to run a marathon, I think the goal should be become a runner. And if the goal is become a runner, and you start running and that becomes part of your life, and you go to the gym a couple of times a week to support that goal, then running a marathon is just something that you do as a fun thing, as a check-in, but you're still a runner. So you keep running after the marathon. So, that's something that I've really shifted since my slap tears. Before slap tears, I was goal oriented. And when I was goal oriented, if I wasn't making tangible progress towards my goals, I would push myself harder and I would always get injured. And now that I'm process focused, process oriented, I have goals, but the number one goal is that I do my workouts, that I keep my process going. And that means that I can actually achieve my goals every day. So you have the opportunity to achieve your goal every day when you're process focused, because the goal is to do the process. And if you do the process of doing strength training and of doing flexibility training and of doing fitness training, I do it all. I do runs a couple of times a week as well. Then you are guaranteed going to be moving towards your goals. And with that shift in mindset, after having a slap tear in both shoulders, I've not only been able to overcome slap tears, I've even recently had golfer's elbow again for the second time. I got golfer's elbow last year in both arms again. I've overcome that. And I've been able to put on about 10 kilograms or 22 pounds of muscle in the past, it's almost 3 years now. And I've developed some incredible levels of strength. Like I'm stronger in dips and in pull-ups than I've ever been, even before the slap tears. And that's part of the reason why I got the slap tears, because I wasn't strong enough for everything that I was doing. So yeah, I think being process focused is a really, really valuable thing. And what this whole experience has taught me is it's how incredible the body is. If you do, like, whatever you do, your body will adapt to. So if you sit on your ass and eat shit watching Netflix, you'll adapt to that. Your body will become weak and it will become frail, and you basically adapt to your environment. And you are an expression of your environment. Like, your body is an expression of your choices and your environment. There is no denying it. And so whenever there's something going, like, let me give the caveat, okay? I know that there are those of you out there that have health issues or whatever that are an outlier to what I'm saying. I get that. So please understand that I'm not talking to you in that respect. But in my personal experience, for 95% or even 98% of the rest of us, the issues that we're dealing with in our body are largely due to the choices that we're making in our lives. And when you change your choices, when you change your habits, and when you change the focus of what you do with your time, your body adapts to these new choices, and you become, an expression of a new environment that you've created. And so the environment that my body was an expression of was the fallout and the aftermath of abusing drugs and alcohol in my 20s, and then going 4 years as an infantry soldier, where your body just gets absolutely smashed. They don't give a shit if you're feeling pain in the army. You just got to suck it up and push through. And so that was what I was dealing with. That was the snapshot of my life. I was living, I was living in a body that was the result of those choices. And so, another big, mindset. I can't remember the word. There's so many different words, but I've worked with many, many mentors over the past 20 years, and one of them, I think it was Ben Pakulski that said this, but he talks about stances or frames, or it's like you have these attitudes, like these certain attitudes for different aspects of your life that are something that you foster and that you adopt to get the result that you want. And this is this attitude of reframing yourself from short-term goals and gratification to long-term success. And something that a part of my this is a big part actually of my success with slap tear rehab, is that I had already, when I'd gotten out of the army and I was 34, I had adopted this mentality that I had a 10-year transformation goal, because in the very least of what I'd learned at age 34, 12 years ago, what I had learned is that focusing on what makes me feel good now did not get me what I wanted. So, through my 20s, feeling like, oh, I feel like having a drink now, or I feel like, staying up late and partying with my friends now. That's what I feel like doing now. Or I feel like sitting down and just watching movies this weekend. Or I feel like going and getting junk food. Like, acting on those impulses of what you want to do now did not get me what I want in life. It didn't even come close. And in fact, it got me a whole lot of what I didn't want in life. I had I just had no direction. I had nothing material to show for my life. Like when friends were, halfway through their mortgage and things like that, I didn't have anything like that. And I just wasn't happy with any of it. And I got this mentality. I remember hearing it from Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins talks about this idea of don't be concerned about what you can or can't achieve in 6 months. Be concerned with what you can achieve in 15 years. I remember hearing him say that. And so I was, for the first time in my life, in my 30s, I was really thinking about what can I achieve in 10 years? What will happen in my life if I really work on turning my health around, if I really turn myself around from being somebody that spends their time playing video games and watching movies and, like as soon as I knock off work, it's all just about what's going to make me feel good now. Changing from that person to somebody who does everything that they possibly can in every waking hour that they have to progress their life forward in, either relationships or financial or business or, physical goals or whatever it is. And so I'd really been working on that mentality already for a few years when I had my slap tears. So I already had this long-term mindset. And I think if you haven't done that yet, if you're dealing with a slap tear and you're still only really focused on how quickly can you get out of this slap tear? How quickly can you get to where you want to be in a month's time or in 3 months or whatever it is? Then I think that you're approaching it in a way that isn't going to serve you well long term, because at age 46 now, you look at the very real possibility that you have less years ahead of you than you have behind you. And that's obviously a very real possibility and probably a probability at my age. And so you really start to think about, like, where do I want to be in 10 years' time? Like, where I am now with my body, and any of the aches and pains and stuff that I have and the things that would restrict me from being able to do the things that I want to do I want those things to have gotten worse in 10 years so that in 10 years I can even do less than I can do now? Or do I want those things to have gotten better? And so I think if you can start looking at your health and fitness like that, like, where do I want to be in 10 years? It really changes the way that you work out and what you do in the now. Because when I was thinking like that, I was thinking to myself, do I want to be able to do acrobatics when I'm in my 50s? And I was thinking, no, I don't think I do. I don't think that's going to matter to me. I don't think it's going to matter to me if I can do a flip or a jump kick or whatever it is in my 50s. What will matter to me is I want to be able to look good. I want to be able to go to the beach and feel proud of the body that I'm in. I want to be flexible enough that I can move without pain so that I can do whatever activities I want to be able to do. And I want to still be able to do some cool stuff with my training, like some handstands and, muscle ups. And I want to be able to do good pull-ups and things like that. Like, I want to be able to go and do a workout with people and feel like if I'm working out with whoever that's creating the workout, that I don't have to say, oh no, I can't do that. I'll need to do a modified exercise. And so, with that mentality, it completely changed the way I train in the now, because I was training for the future. And when you train like that, you get incredible results. It really happens. And so I should touch on, because I know that this was, and I'll answer you guys' questions, but Panther Black asked me in his original question, he said, what are your symptoms now? What do you experience now? So now I'm, I think, 5 years after the first slap tear and about 4 years after the second one or something like that. And I don't experience pain and restriction in what I do from day to day. However, there is a constant, I don't even know if I'd call it a 1 out of 10 pain or a half out of 10 pain, but there is a constant little bit of pain in this shoulder. And so if I'm not warmed up or ever and I'll reach up there, like even when I just reached then, I just got like a 1 out of 10 pain here. But it doesn't stop me doing anything that I want to be able to do. And if I don't, it's funny, the longer that I won't work out for, like if I get sick and I don't work out for a few days, the pain gets worse. Because what you do, like when I do my workouts now, all my workouts have been built and developed around this slap tear. And so I always do, at the start of my workouts, I always do a little bit of the scapular stabilizer. Like my warm-ups look completely different now than from before I had the slap tears. And so now my warm-ups are all about, activating the scapular stabilizers and activating the rotator cuff and, activating all my muscles and going through full range of motion. And as soon as I do that stuff, the aches and pains go away. But that said, if I do some reps that are too fast, especially on dips, like if I do dips where I change from the eccentric to the concentric too quickly, or if I am not conscious of my form and technique, like if I'm not thinking about it, then I will still sometimes get some pain that will persist for a couple of days, but it never goes longer than that. And it's something that I just know exactly what to do, of how to manage it. And a part of managing slap tear for me and slap tear pain is trigger point release as well. So it's some things that I learned from Nilesh and Leroy, where when they were treating me and they were doing trigger point release on these different muscles throughout my shoulder, my shoulder. And I have done a video on that I can't remember what it's called, but it's on my channel. And so I'll do trigger point release with a massage ball, in different spots around my shoulder and my back and my chest and stuff. And that will give me an incredible relief in that pain. And so, I know how to deal with it now and I know how to manage it. And overall, it doesn't cause me problems. I can still do all the things that I love. So Panther Black is saying similar story here again, slap tear, broken scapular concussion from downhill mountain biking. Man, that sounds brutal. And that would have been a hard hit, I can imagine. With a 3.5-year-old at home, had to revisit which sports provided mental balance versus being able to not wake up in pain. Yeah, I think it's a really, it's such a hard thing to do. Like I really empathize for any of you out there that are having to go through this, that are at the stage that I've described, where right now you're thinking, what do I have to stop doing that I love doing because it's making this injury worse or it's making this stuff worse. It's such a hard thing to go through. But I truly believe that if you embrace the process and if you start to, and there's a lot of meditation that was involved in this for me. I did a lot of meditating in the past several years as well to develop mindfulness and to learn mindfulness. So if you don't know what that is, go and look it up. And that was a part of it, like to really to reshape my mind and to reshape the way that I approach things. And yeah, look, I really hope this helps you guys. Marin's saying your 75 hard version is awesome for shifting behavior, easy shift in mindset, incredible. And I agree, 98% of my patients did not want to change their behavior. So frustrating. Yeah, 100%. Marin is a GP, is a doctor. So she's talking about seeing people as a doctor. And yeah, Marin, the 75 hard version that we do inside the UMS online personal training I love it. I think it's really, really good. We adapted, for any of those of you that know the 75 hard that Andy Frischella created. I think it's such a great program, but there's a couple of things that I don't particularly like about the way that he's done it. Part of it is that they don't give you the answers. They say you can do any workout of your choice and you can follow any diet of your choice. We give people the workouts and give people the diet. And then the other part of it is that I think that there's one or two things of his that are a little bit too strict. The idea of having to do 2 workouts a day and one of them has to be outdoors. We like to say do 2 workouts a day, but one of them can be getting 10,000 steps, or one of them can be doing a daily meditation as well. So as long as you're doing a workout and doing one of those things, or a second workout of your choice, but it just gives you a little bit more freedom, and it still creates that real habit of making change in your life, making really positive change. All right, team. I think we're getting to the end of this. I'm starting to run out of things to talk about, but if you guys, if you have any questions or any things that you want me to talk about, then please comment, put them in. This whole show was inspired by Panther Black, who asked a really great question. Justin, you said, no, Alan, you said any wisdom to impart on inguinal hernias. So I have to Google inguinal hernias because I know what a hernia is, but I haven't heard that term inguinal before. So just give me a sec, because I have trained people with hernias many times. Inguinal hernias. Let's see. Inguinal hernia. An inguinal hernia occurs when tissue such as part of the intestine protrudes through a weak spot. Yes, I've dealt with this before. So in my experience, an inguinal hernia does require surgery. The people that I've dealt with that had an inguinal hernia, they did end up getting surgery, and there is a lot that has to be modified with your workout, because basically you basically can't do anything that causes intra-abdominal pressure. So anything where your intra-abdominal muscles have to contract and create pressure, that is really, really bad for a hernia like that, which sucks, man, because it means that there's a lot that you can't do. And one of the biggest things that you can't do is you can't do high intensity lifting. So any kind of lifting where you have to take a breath and, so obviously ab exercises are out. But even things like a pull-up where, it's one of those horrible, horrible conditions that, really restrict what you have to do. What you can do. And so my experience of working with somebody, and I've coached somebody when they were diagnosed with an inguinal, I think you pronounce it, inguinal hernia. So when they were diagnosed with it, they were told that they had a lot of fat that they had to lose. They had to lose a lot of fat before they could even get the surgery. So they were morbidly obese, and they were told that they had to lose the fat. They lost 20 kilograms with us, or 44 pounds, and then they were at a weight where they could get the surgery. They got the surgery, and then we trained them through their rehab as well. And I think what they do, they get like some kind of a gauze, and they put it in between the intestines and the abdominal wall, something like that, some kind of a gauze that helps to hold it all in place. Marin's saying, I agree, get surgery unless it is super small, but weightlifting will not keep it small. Yeah. I mean, Marin's a GP, there you go. So that's, this is one of those things that I'm not a doctor and I haven't dealt with this myself, but I have trained someone through it. And that's what I remember of it, what I said. What I understand of a hernia is, an inguinal hernia, is that doing exercise and doing high intensity training, like, it ain't going to get better on its own, unfortunately. So I'm sorry to be, if I am the bearer of bad news, I'm sorry to say that. But then outside of that, the people that I've trained, you can get back to doing, good stuff. Just be aware to be progressive with your training. Do not rush it. And Marin's saying it never gets better on its own. There you go. Cool. So I hope that helps, Alan, if you're still watching. I hope that gives you some insight into what you're dealing with. And thanks so much, guys, for all your support, for joining me. I hope you got something out of that. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed that. If you got something out of it. If my experience was able to inspire you, and if you haven't done so yet, go and grab the Slap Tear Rehab Blueprint. If you go to unitygym.com/Slap Tear Blueprint, you can grab it. And if you just want to skip all of that and come and work with me online, where I'll be writing your custom Slap Tear rehab programs, and you'll be working with me directly via one-on-one coaching inside our app, you can do that if you go to unitygym.com/Slap Tear, and you can go and check that out. And a couple more comments here. Alan's saying, thanks for those words. Not diagnosed yet, but the thought is depressing. Yeah, look, man, it sucks, doesn't it? It's a tough thing, man, when you have these things. Look, go and get it diagnosed. That's the first thing. You've got to get it diagnosed. And then in the very least, what I recommend that you can take from this show is, once you get diagnosed, practice stoicism, work on the things that you can control, try to take your attention away from the things that you can't control, and be process focused. And if you do that, I strongly believe that we can all improve our conditions. I have rarely seen people that can't improve their conditions. And I've worked with people that have one arm. I've coached people who have one arm, and they were deadlifting. And the way that they came into the gym, I didn't coach them on how to set up for a deadlift at all. They had this like arm strap that they would come in and they would do it up with one arm and with their teeth, and they'd wrap the strap around the bar and then hold the bar with one hand and have the strap around the bar, and they would do deadlifts with one arm, you know. So when you see people like that, it really makes you wonder if you've still got both your arms and both your legs. I don't want to say how bad have you got it. I don't want to downplay what any of you might be dealing with, but I think there's always somebody that's got it worse than you. And there's people out there that have probably got it worse than you and that are probably doing more and working with what they've got. I mean, there's this guy online, I don't know what his name is, but he was born with no arms and no legs. And it brought tears to my eyes watching this guy talk. And what he does for a living is that he does motivational speaking to school students. He goes around and he motivates school students. And if that doesn't make you cry watching this guy on stage with no arms and no legs, and a part of his demonstration is that he falls over and he talks through how you can getting back up in life when you fall over, and he gets back up with no arms and no legs. It's just mind-blowing. And so what I'm trying to say here is that whatever you've got, I firmly believe that whatever it is, you can always improve your life. You can always make your life better. And, you might not be able to do the thing that you wanted to be able to do for your whole life that was a goal of yours forever. Maybe that is something that you'll never be able to do. But you can make your life better. You really can. And so, there's some great things that I've got on my channel where I share that. If you haven't watched it, there's one video that I've got that I think I honestly, if you haven't watched this, I honestly think that everybody in the world should watch it, because I adapted it from a Dr. Joe Dispenza podcast that he did with Chris Williamson, and I was so inspired by it. And it's all about what do they call it? Neuroplasticity. So where you can change your brain, and I've learned about neuroplasticity for years now. But when I listened to this podcast, it was put in such a powerful way for me that it really made me. It really inspired me, and it really made me think. And I'm going to share a link for you guys in the chat here so that it's easy for you to go and have a look at this. If you've got time, if you've got 15 minutes, it only goes for 15 minutes. Honestly, go and watch that video right now, because the words that are spoken, I've basically just taken Joe Dispenza's words, but then I made a script out of it, and then I modified it so that it's talking specifically about health and fitness. And then I just, read his words, and I've put B-roll to it to try and make it inspiring. And it's incredibly powerful. It's all about how you can change your brain, and it's all about actionable things that you can do to really take control of your life. So hope that helps. Nathaniel is saying, I had one of those hernia repairs when I was a teenager. Oh, there you go. And how are you going now? Has it worked well for you, the repair? All right, team. Thank you so much for your engagement. Keep the questions coming in. I need your questions. I need your engagement to make these live streams valuable. And without you, these are just a whole lot of me sitting here and umming and ahhing and trying to think about what I'm going to talk about, which is really, really hard to do at 5:30 a.m. when you've just woken up and you don't drink coffee. So I really want to thank you guys for your engagement, and I'll see you in tomorrow's stream. Oh no, hey, you know what? I've got to tell you guys. This week, I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm doing an online course, my first online course in ages, and it's a workshop. And it is live. It's a 3-day event that starts at 8 a.m. Pacific time in America, which, guess what? Drum roll, please, in Australia is 2 a.m. So I get up at 1:30 a.m. and do a full day workshop, which I think goes from 2 a.m. until 11 a.m. or until midday or something like that. So for those 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week, which everywhere else in the world for you guys will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I won't be going live at my usual time. So what I will probably do is I will probably still do a live stream after, so I will still answer your questions, but I doubt it will be at a time that suits you guys, because it'll be at around 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. for us, which is in about 5 or 6 hours from now. So tomorrow I'll go live again. So I'll see you tomorrow, but then it won't be again until next Monday that I'll be back on track for this time. So yeah. Nathaniel is saying, may have messed something up again, though, by coughing so much in the past number of years. Yeah, coughing is actually one of those things that can really be bad for a hernia. Look, guys, I hope you guys get through it. I really do. And I will see you on tomorrow's show. Have a great day, everybody.